Right. Welcome to the Survival Mode podcast. And today I have an amazing guy. I just met him the other day, but he was referred, somebody reached out and said he has a great story. And when we talked yesterday, we just hit it off. Maybe it's because we're Italian, but I think his story is just really, really amazing. And I am not going to steal his thunder, but what I really got out of our conversation was, he's the epitome of not letting a life-changing diagnosis and things that would knock me down for sure. He just gets up and keeps going and just really out there helping others. His name is Rick Franzo, and not only is he done some things in the brain tumor world, a leading social media group that has over 14,000 followers. He's written a book. He's been on radio. Just a great guy in what he's doing here. And Rick, welcome.
Thank you. You said it all. I think we're done here. And so thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about, let's start kind of what, your background, kind of growing up, and then kind of what led to, a diagnosis, and tell me a little bit about that for sure.
Sure, absolutely. So born and raised here in the beautiful Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. Went to school here, high school, college. Married a wonderful woman, Debbie. We've been married for 34 years coming up in May, and together for 37. And we have three amazing kids, all adults, all grown. So we have the empty nest syndrome going here, which is just fine. It's okay. Love you kids, miss you, but it's kind of mom and dad time right now. I worked in a lot of different, my background is fairly diverse. I was an on-air radio disc jockey for about 10 years. I went to college for communications. And so left college when I got my full-time gig in radio. Maybe not the smartest move, but most of my experience is in the grocery business. And so I was a buyer and a manager and a merchandiser and a professional baker for 12 years. And I was also a corrections officer. I did a lot of different things. And so never really settled. The last 12 years before I started my corporation, my business was in a state university. And I was a buyer for the bookstore. But 4 years ago, just about, I bought a franchise, a business coaching franchise. And I feel that my path with brain tumors, really, that trajectory led me to be a business coach. So I've owned my own corporation and had my own business coaching for the last 4 years. So there you have it in a nutshell, Todd.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about what led you to, finding out you had a brain tumor. What was going on, in your life, and what happened,
Yeah, life was good. I mean, back in college, taking classes, working. I worked a couple jobs. And so I worked at a local ski area and security during the winter time, and even in the summertime, a little bit with the water park. And doing the family thing, and everything was just, coming along down the road real smooth. And I was at a barbecue. It was May of 2009, and it was the end of the season barbecue for all the security team from the winter time. And it was retired state troopers, former police officers, football players from the college, former corrections officers like myself. And just people that worked some part-time gigs up there on security. And so we were playing horseshoes at the barbecue. It was at a retired state trooper's home near mine. And during the game, I lost all strength and coordination in the right side of my body. I couldn't reach halfway to the pin. When I tried to throw straight, it would kind of go off to the left or really high in the air. Want to say I wasn't drunk. I wasn't, impaired in any way. It just, everything in the snap of a finger just shut down. And it scared me enough for me to go to my doctor a couple days later. He sent me to a neurologist who did some physical tests and said, yeah, it looks like you got some weakness in the right side of your body. We're going to do an MRI. So about a week later, I had the MRI done, and they said I'd get the results in a week. So I finished up at about 8 o'clock, got home by 9, had some dinner, went to bed, got up the next day, went to the college to work. And I got the call about 10 o'clock. And they said, and I knew that it couldn't be good. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why are they calling me here at work? And so they said, Mr. Franzo, we usually don't make this type of call. We have a huge brain tumor. We have a neurosurgeon from one of the larger hospitals in our area. He's in the office today. You have a 1 o'clock appointment and be here.
Wow. So let me back up for a second. So you're at this event, you're at this like picnic, right? You're playing horseshoes, and you're like you're swinging your arm, and you're like, something's off here. Was it like you're like emergency room material, or were you like, oh, this is just some weakness? I feel like, what was going on in your head at that time?
So, pride, ego, machismo, whatever you want to call it, typical guy nonsense. I don't know what's happening. Maybe I just didn't stretch enough. I could have been having a stroke. It just didn't matter. You kind of, eat through it. There was no pain or anything else. It was just weird. I didn't feel anything, it wasn't surreal. I didn't have like an episode or anything else, but it was just weakness. And so hindsight's always 2020. Should I have gone to the ER at that point? Yeah, probably. But did I know? And so, we don't have the time here to go into psychology of the male psyche, but two things that really hold everybody back, not only in life, but in business and just in general, is pride and ego. And if you don't toss them aside, you're really not going to give yourself a chance to grow. So to answer your question, it was ER material in hindsight, but it scared me enough for me to go to my doctor, which was a big step. I wasn't really one to go to the doctor that often.
It's funny because maybe it's because we're Italian, who knows? Guy machismo. I did the same thing. I lost my, I had some visual thing, and I was like, oh my God, let me drink some water or whatever. I called my girlfriend. I got out. It was enough to annoy me, right?
Right, sure.
I was like, all right, I'll call my doctor and they'll call me back. But I didn't run to the ER either initially, for sure.
It's so funny. We almost got that. And it isn't just Italian. I think it's just like a guy thing, upbringing, your history, your heredity, your role models, whatever it is. Man, it was one of the worst things that could have happened. And, I was like, it's all right. I'll just walk it off. It's all right. It's all right. It's okay. Suck it up, buttercup.
Dust it off, man. Dust it off.
You're going to get better. It's okay. You'll get over it. Suck it up.
Yeah, for sure. So then, a few days later, you got the scan, they called you. Like, what's your thought about that? Because I know I interviewed a bunch of people that had gotten calls back. I went through an ER route, and that's where mine was. So I don't have that experience of somebody calling me back like, hey, on the phone, like, hey, listen, you got to come here. Like, what was that like for you?
So once I got to hang the phone up, because I just kind of dropped it and let it sit there, and I just went into shock, and I went and I told my supervisor, real simply, I walked into his office and I said, hey, I got a brain tumor and I'm going home. I can't even remember what he said. I just turned around and got my keys. And one of the people that worked with me said, what's going on? I said, I have a brain tumor. I said, I'm going home. And that was it. That's all I said. And I walked out. So you can imagine their shock. And I just left. And so I got out. This I remember distinctly is, I got out to my car in the parking lot. And I sat in there, and I just I kind of broke down a little bit. I started to sob, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm dead. I can't even believe this. My daughter at the time, she's my youngest, was 11. And so I started to drive home, and I had to pull over almost immediately. And I just pulled over the side of the road, and I just started to dry heave. And I said, it was that devastating. And I still get kind of choked up thinking about it, because I thought, how could this happen in the snap of a finger? I'm not going to have the opportunity to help raise her, walk her down the aisle, whatever it is. And that was tough. And so I made it back to the car, right? And then I made a phone call. And who do you think I called?
Your wife?
No, she drives a school
Oh,
bus.
your mom. That's right.
Yeah, my mom. When a guy's in trouble, if he has the chance, if he's fortunate enough to still have his mom around, that's who he calls. So I called my mom, who lives very near me, 5 minutes away, and I said, "Mom," I said, "I just was told that I have a brain tumor. Debbie and I have an appointment at 1 o'clock at the neurosurgeon, and so I need you to be there." She said, "I'll be to your house in 5 minutes." I said, "Don't call Debbie." I said, "I'm going home." I said, "I got to tell her." She goes, "Understood." And so 10 minutes later, I was home. And I pulled in the parking lot, and she was out on the porch. It was a beautiful spring day. And she said, "What are you doing home? I shouldn't be home for another 5, 6 hours." And I just lost it. I said, they just called with my MRI results. I got a brain tumor. I'm going to die. And so we've got an appointment with the surgeon at 1 o'clock down where I had the MRI done. And I almost just dropped right there on the stone driveway. And she just it was chaos. And so, she went running around and kind of in circles. And so she's reaching for her phone. She's got to call work and tell them she's not going to come in that afternoon. And my middle son was home from college. And so he came out, and I just stumbled in the house, and I sat in the couch, and he sat on the couch with me, and he just rubbed my back, and I just sat there, and I just was crying, and I go, "I'm dead." I said, "I can't believe it." I said, I'm going to die. And there was nothing else. And so kind of going back to that whole male thing, tears are not anything to be ashamed of. And I shed a lot in the, since all this happened. And it's just how it is. So my mom came down, we went down to the surgeon, and they said, yeah, they had the image up there. They said, "You got a huge brain tumor." He said, "Really?" He says, "To be honest," he says, I can't even believe that you're sitting here in front of me and that you're alive." He said, "We don't think that it's cancer." He said, "Because it's just enormous, and the cancer would have killed you a long time ago. So we feel that it is more than likely 95% a brain tumor called a meningioma." It is a non-cancerous. I despise the word benign because benign signifies harmless, and brain tumors, no matter where they are, and it's always location, 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 are very, very invasive. And so it's in a highly operable area because it's like your entire top of your head. It at the barbecue, what it did is it hit critical mass. And so it crushed your brain down as far as it could go. And it pushed your skull up 4.5 centimeters. Said, "You knew you had a lump on your head, right?" I did. And I went to the doctor a couple of years prior, and I said, "What do you think this lump is?" And I was asymptomatic. I didn't have blurred vision. I wasn't nauseous. I didn't have nosebleeds. And so they said, "Well, probably a calcium deposit." I said, "Okay." And so was it a misdiagnosis? Yes and no, because really I was asymptomatic. And when that happened, an MRI was not, standard operating procedure to check out a lump on your head, where I feel that it's more kind of the way that it is now. So when a doctor tells you you're going to live, you feel pretty good about that. And hindsight's always 20/20, right? So 6 months before my diagnosis in the barbecue, I was having nosebleeds and tripping while I was walking upstairs, and having little episodes where I was nauseous and almost passing out. But I thought, I'm working 2 jobs. I'm back in college, the whole family thing. So it was another one of those. Let's just walk it off, Rick, and just it's time to just get over it and keep moving on. And
Yep.
again, that's what a mistake that could have been. So he said, "You have probably less than 2 weeks to live, and you don't have cancer." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, the pressure is just, it's enormous on your brain." He said, "Why I said that we were surprised that you were alive." He said, "Before this happened," he said, "You should have probably, it was probably more likely that you would have had a grand mal seizure, or you would have just slipped into a coma that you wouldn't have ever come out of, going to sleep."
Wow.
And so they put me on steroids, they put me on anti-seizure medicine, and they said, we're going to need at least, this is an enormous brain tumor. My surgeon was just, my surgeons are my heroes, man. They some of my heroes. They saved my life. He says, I've been doing this for 30 years. And he said, I've never seen something so big. He says, and my colleague who's going to be in on the surgery, I already know who's going to be with me. He doesn't know it yet, but he is. And so he has 30 years experience, he says, and he's never seen anything this big either. And so I went home and I had to just kind of digest everything that happened. The conversation with my daughter was very difficult, but she was 11. And so I said, my recovery is going to be quick. And, I'm going to have the summer off, which I never had. And so while I'm recovering, we're going to take walks and everything. And she was like, that's great.
Yeah, that's got to be hard. Back to when you were sharing about, when you got the news, right? And that you were sobbing, it's interesting because, I think humans, I'm going to say guys too. And, for me, when they came into the room in the ER and they said, you're not going crazy. This is what they said. You're not going crazy. You got a marble sized tumor in your head, and it's kind of deep. And I was just shocked. Right. And the only things that could come out of my mind, my mouth, were like, this sucks. It was like, just getting a gut punch, like, but worse. I couldn't even describe it. And I didn't all out sob, but because, I got trauma. So I don't want to, it's funny. The more I learn about trauma, it's healthy, like you said, to cry.
It is.
You need to keep crying. And so tears came down my face, and I'm like, this sucks. And I wish I had my mom, because my mom passed like a few, that year early. And I was like, because you're right. When you're sick, you want mom's chicken soup, you want whatever, right?
Whatever, sure.
And so, it's my girlfriend was calling, she was just checking on me. I said, this is not good. I said, this is not good. There's a brain tumor in my head. And she drove down, and my ex-wife, who I'm close with, nurse practitioner, super smart. Like, she could probably walk around a lot of these docs. And I said, she goes, oh my God, this was serious. And I think, when you mentioned to the benign, right? Because they didn't know mine right off the bat by looking at it on the scan. Even when they first took it out, I had to wait a little bit.
Sure.
So, but when you're right, like, this was the big thing. Benign is not fine when it's and this is your term that you said to me, hashtag benign is not fine. I think, I had people reaching out to me. I actually had a good friend of mine who's a coach kind of help put together a post, because I just couldn't put the words together. I shared my feelings. I just couldn't do it. And the outcry of what people were, helping me with. But somebody from the Brain Tumor Association reached out, and he said to me, and I'll never forget it, he goes, you're never going to be the same, in a way that, you have this. And somebody was in the CPU of your body. It's not like you getting surgery on your arm or your hand. Not to say that all that, I'm minimizing that, but it's kind of weird because it's in your brain. You know what I mean?
Well, you're talking about an organ, Todd, that was never meant to see the light of day. So, the saying is that once air hits the brain, it's never the same. And it's absolutely true. But, there is that, and I'm not going to use the term new normal, because over the last 24 months almost, we've heard that so many times, so it's almost cliche. But you have to get used to the new you, and that's really it's a difficult thing. And there's a new you, I'm sure. There's a new me. I like the guy that I used to be, but this guy is even bigger, better, stronger, faster, and smarter in a lot of ways. So, everybody's got, it's almost same circus, different tent. When we were talking about our stories, and I've been involved with the brain tumor community for the last 30 or 13 years, and you for the last few. And so, size doesn't even matter. Mine was the size of a cheeseburger. Yours was the size of a marble. It's all the same circus, different tent. It's not about the size. So, I had to go in for surgery, and so I had an embolization, which I didn't count on beforehand. But once they did, and we talked about brain mapping a little bit, you and I, and they found that there were 6 blood vessels that were feeding this monster in my head, and this uninvited guest that I, was ready to evict. And just a side note, people name their tumors. And so I wouldn't give it the respect. It was just my tumor was called "Get Out of My Fucking Head," because that's what it was. I gave it no respect because it disrespected me, and it didn't deserve even the respect of a name. And so I had that embolization, and so that was just as dicey as the surgery. It was very precise. They went up through my groin and my carotid artery, and they had to block the blood vessels, and so it was like little balls of glue almost that had to go and block it the day before the surgery, because they always find they find a way, they find other paths. And so it was the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. They had me pinned down, which they had to, and I had to be awake and I had to feel it all. And the brain itself doesn't feel any pain, but everything around it does. So I was feeling all the collateral pain, and I felt everything. They got 5 out of the 6. The biggest one was wrapped around my left eye, and they had to get it during surgery, because if they tried to get it then, probably I would have been blind in one eye, in the left eye. So the next day I had 10 and a half hours of surgery. I'm gonna give you a spoiler alert. I lived. And so hate to ruin the end of the story before we even get there. They took my skull off. They drilled a dozen holes into my head. They sawed my skull off. They said, they were very frank afterwards, very there was a lot of candor going on. They said that when they were pulling, they felt my skull. It was something they never felt before. It's like it wanted to pop off. They had to actually hold it down so it wouldn't pop off, because of the pressure that was exerted on it. So they sawed it off, and they resected the entire tumor, and my skull was compromised, right? The bone was compromised, so they had to put a plate in there. So like any good contractor, they put this titanium mesh plate in, they screwed it down, they put bone plaster over it, put my real scalp over it, and voila, it's still pretty. And so that was the most important thing, right? And so
that's the weird, like, of course you've had a lot of, they did a lot there, but the one thing I didn't, and I'm a nurse, right? Like, this is my epic fail in my head, right? Is like, I didn't realize that the skull is, I didn't focus on it because I was focused on other things, that the skull is not a bone like the other bones in our body, right? Like, and I didn't, they obviously, and the funny thing was they didn't have me shave my head. They didn't do anything. They said, oh, your hair could be fine. And they just they do the burr holes and cut, and then titanium clips. But it's the weirdest thing that the bone doesn't really heal together.
It doesn't. And so that's kind of the, one of the things that people don't realize. Funny you said about shaving your head. I went to a barber at the time that always cut my hair. He gave me a really nice fade, and I had him shave my head bald. And, I told him why, and kind of broke down there in the barber shop. So showed me a picture, and I have a picture, and I look at it, and I still can't look at it very often. I look like Aykroyd, a cone head, and it looked just like that. And it was really awful. And, but I had to shave my head. They were going to shave a portion of it. I said, I'll just take care of it myself. It was like that small measure of control that I wanted to have, which was kind of ridiculous, but yet I had to have it. So, one of the things that I did, but I had that titanium plate, but the collateral damage from my benign brain tumor was that I was paralyzed from the waist down. And that's something they didn't see coming. They've seen it before, but they didn't anticipate that. That was the damage because of the pressure, not the surgery, but the pressure on my motor skills that it did. And I asked the question, I said, well, now this is even, I thought it was bad before. And so you ask that question, well, it can't get any worse, right? Or you make that statement, it can. And so I said, am I ever going to walk again? And they said, there's a pretty good probability that you won't. And so, we just have to keep going through the process, which is monitoring what your damage is and having you go to physical therapy. So I spent 8 days in the hospital, and then I got transferred to Good Shepherd Rehab, which had a unit up by me in the Poconos. They made special accommodations, and that's where I was transferred 8 days later. Go ahead.
So let me ask you, like so you're paralyzed from the waist down. You come off, you come out of the surgery, and you realize you can't move your lower extremities, and you talk to the doctors about it.
I could
What do
feel them, not, I could feel them. If you could slap it, you could poke it, whatever, I could feel it. I couldn't move it.
you couldn't move them? What's going on in your head about this? Like, what do you?
So there's that 5 stages of grief that we talk about. I'm not patient, so I hit 3 of them. And so I never bargained or anything else. It was, I went through a pretty low time. And so I'll kind of touch on this briefly is, while I was in the hospital, Father's Day rolled around. So, how great is that? And so I'm in there, I'm paralyzed. Probably, thinking I'll never walk again. And my daughter's there. First time that she saw me since my surgery. She's in the hospital room. She's on the whiteboard in there where the doctors, this is your nurse, this is your doctor for the day, this is the shift or whatever. And she's writing Happy Father's Day, and they brought balloons and everything. And I'm just crying. I'm just destroyed. I'm done. I'm a disaster. And I'm feeling like I failed everybody. And I was unbearable. Everybody left. They were like, we can't take this. I did nothing except for I was an emotional destruction zone. And so that night, I'm laying there and it's dark, and I'm hot and I'm not moving. And I go, what's the matter with you? I go, really? I said, this is how you're going to go down? You should be ashamed of yourself. And this is the self-talk that I had. And I hit rock bottom. That was bottom. There was nowhere lower to go. And I said, you better do something about yourself, and you better fight, and you better do whatever it is. And again, that never happens again. You don't ever feel like that again. And so it was kind of an epiphany for me. So from that point on, it was war. It was war with my body to walk again. And so attitude equals altitude. Everybody thinks that's kind of a, just kind of a rah-rah phrase or whatever it is. Your attitude means a lot. So I was transferred to rehab, and I didn't know what that meant. I was in pain at that point, and I was scared, and I didn't know what to expect. And so they said on the whiteboard there, they said, what's your therapy goal? I said, it's to walk out of here. They were like, okay. They wrote it down. Nobody believed it. Nobody. They all told me. Everybody told me afterwards that they didn't believe it. The therapist didn't believe it. The doctors didn't believe it. The nurses didn't believe it. My family didn't believe it. Nobody believed it. The person walking on the sidewalk, they didn't believe it. Nobody. The only one that believed it was me. And so as hard as I worked, which I did, I worked my ass off to walk again. And I was very fortunate that things hooked up. The connections were made, and I was able to move again. The therapists worked harder than I did. They included me as part of my therapy. They worked night and day with me for me to achieve my goal. And so after 6.5 weeks, I walked out of there with leg braces and a walker, but I walked out, and then did months of outpatient therapy, taught myself how to drive again. My wife couldn't stay in the car with me. I was just too erratic in the car. And so she's like, I can't be here.
So wait a second. So you're like, I'm sure, like, I know this probably, I'm sure the doctor's saying, yeah, you shouldn't drive, but you're like, man, I'm getting in there. I'm teaching myself how to drive. Is that what you kind of did?
No, they never said I couldn't drive. I got out of there. They were like, well, if you feel you could drive, go ahead. They didn't say to or fro. Maybe if I really would have pushed the issue, they would have said maybe I shouldn't drive. But I had to, after a little while, I was driving myself to my outpatient therapy. I went back to work. My feet were still paralyzed. And so I was using a quad cane to get around, but I couldn't, I wasn't going to take assistance or anything else. That wasn't pride. That was just me taking ownership of being fortunate enough to earn for my family. And so
assistance in what way? I want to unpack this a little bit.
Sure.
You didn't want to take assistance. Tell me more about that.
So, I had the opportunity. They talked about Social Security and everything else, and that wasn't an option. I said, if I have to be in a wheelchair and go back to work, that's how I'm going to do it. In fact, the therapists were so on board with what it was that I wanted to do. Is I was very close. I was 200 yards away from my office at the university. That's where the rehab place was. We would go every day. We did some when the weather was nice, right? And it was summertime, outpatient or outside therapy. So I went in a wheelchair, and we made sure that everything there was accommodated, ACA accommodation, so that I could do my job. They even gave me like a grabber if I had to grab things from behind the counter or whatever. And so they measured it all out to make sure that I was able to get in and get out with the wheelchair and everything. And the restrooms obviously were, and they had, elevators and everything else, but just so I was able to do my job. And so that's what it was. There was no other choice for me. And I'm not damning anybody that goes on to assistance, because if it was any worse, then yeah, absolutely. But I felt if I can move, I can do it. And so
I never talked about this on a podcast, but it was something that I thought about, when I got the diagnosis. Like,
sure.
I played out, like, what does this mean? What is surgery? Like, I could potentially not walk. I could potentially, all these things kind of come into your brain, right? And I'm like, what? I can't work again. I can't, like, those worries, like, how do you support your lifestyle, and all those things come up. And I'm a guy that, I've been working since I was a kid, and just kind of getting after it for sure. That's what, like, when I started talking to you, I'm like, oh, this guy's like me, we're just getting after it. And all those things, those worries came to me. And when you shared that, I'm like, wow, and if you can't work, I'm not just like you, I'm not, saying anything negative about people that can't, for sure. But it was a worry of mine, for sure.
It is. And that's so common. And again, excuse me, not damning anybody that's on assistance, because they obviously need it. And so, but I felt that I was not, I wasn't a good candidate for it, because I was able to walk again. Not great, right? Still needed a cane. I used my cane today. It was a little icy out here. I went and I took the garbage out to the corner. I brought my cane. There's no shame in that. It was a little icy out there. I'd rather have the cane than not. But I was fortunate, and I'm humbled every day that I'm able to walk and do it. So I didn't have to, and so I was able to drive again and get to and fro. And so that's really what it is. And I thought my life was going good. I started to write a book and everything else, and everything's going good. And I had my annual, I went from like every month, every 3 months, 6 months, and then yearly MRI. So I had a yearly MRI 2 years later in 2011. And lo and behold, what did it show? But another brain tumor.
Wow.
And so that was kind of crushing. And so it was, it's still there. It's right here. It was diagnosed as regrowth. And so very small, not invasive. It's behaved itself. I get it monitored every year. So no action was taken on it. So I figure I'm clear. Everything is going good. And in 2016, I lost hearing in my right ear out of nowhere. We were going to Europe. And so it was a couple days before we left. And I lost hearing. And I said, well, that's going to be good for the plane ride. And I didn't think much of it, but coming back and slowly, I felt my balance start to get worse. I was walking and falling. And so my annual MRI that came up shortly thereafter showed that I had another type of brain tumor, not cancer, but another non-malignant called an acoustic neuroma, right? And so it was wrapped around the 8th cranial nerve on my right side. And so it was throwing off all of my balance. It was causing all kinds of vestibular chaos. And it was something that would have been very tricky to get in surgery. So I went and my surgeons had retired. So I went to a new brain surgeon who was amazing. And we strategized that gamma knife therapy, radiation would be the way that we could do it. It was a good size to do it. It would be less invasive. And so I had gamma knife surgery in 2017. And as the tumor remains, but it did die. But as it started to swell or there was edema from it dying, the necrosis was happening from the inside out. It was causing me to fall again and just walk and fall. And I was very unsteady. In that time, I had left my job that I was at the university. I had a good run, but I wanted to do something for myself. So I bought a business coaching franchise, formed a corporation, and started my business. Well, timing is everything. And so I'm going through physical therapy outpatient again after I launched my business. 2-3 days a week, I'm going to physical therapy and starting a business. So that was incredibly difficult, but it's just the cost of doing business. So I was able to, and I did about 6 months of vestibular therapy, and it was amazing. Good Shepherd outpatient, came to the rescue again and got me back on the right track. And I was able to, kind of compensate for the weakness in one side of the brain to the other and compensate for that. And everything was everything. So my next MRI comes up next month, in less than a month. And so, we shall see. Stay tuned. But, that's kind of where we are. So I live with 2 brain tumors right now. You had asked me before, and so it's funny, any kind of collateral, I feel the plate every day in my head. My pain level is usually around a 4. For me, that's manageable. When it gets higher, then I have to take maybe a Tylenol or something like that, but I'm not on anti-seizure medicine anymore. I got heavy, I dropped weight. Here I'm talking to a health coach, right? A business coach to a health coach, right? So you'll appreciate this. And so I was able to go and regulate all my my blood work, my cholesterol, my blood pressure, things like that. So I'm not on any medication. It feels fantastic. And that's just kind of where I am right now. So there's kind of, it kind of is summed up like this. There's 2 types of pain, right? There's pain that hurts, and it all hurts, but then there's pain that alters. And I just heard this today and I thought it was so relevant. And so the pain that I felt and everybody else around me felt, it was a game changer for me. And so like so many times when people have something happen to them, they want a way to give back. And I can't again go back to the respect part of it. The brain tumors have disrespected me. I won't give them a name or anything else. I can't square off like I would with somebody if they came at me. And so the way that I can fight them is 2 ways. We've got so many heroes on the research side, so that isn't really where my strong point is. And so the most assistance that I can give is on the support and awareness side, and so I do what I can for that.
Yeah. So the scans. So I have one coming up actually this month, and it's always this, in the groups in the world, they call it scanxiety, right?
Anxiety.
So you're like, because it could change the game, and the other thing too is benigns not fine. Like for my tumor, if it grows, they treat it like it's cancer, right? Through either surgery or radiation or, or even chemo just to slow growth down.
Sure.
And, so those are things that are always kind of, in the back of my mind. But I think I love what you shared about, just kind of picking, you just kept going. And and the thing that I like that you shared as well was that like you had hard times and you were difficult to be around, right? And we all go, and that's part of it for sure. Like I think for me, when I got diagnosed, I thought immediately, I was like, the stuff that I thought that was important wasn't that important. And I focused a lot on stuff before, and I had to look at it because listening to you share your story, it brings up like, not only did you feel trauma from the actual surgery, but it creates a trauma. Like you shared, like, when I look at that, it brings up memory. Or when I share, and that stuff affects us, all the time.
Yeah.
So when you were going through this, you have a group on Facebook that is very well attended. And so tell me a little bit about that and what you did for helping yourself and others when you were going through this.
Yeah, and the important thing is, thank you, is, first thing we got to do is help ourselves before we can help anybody else. And so, uh, one of the things that I did was I started to write a little bit, and I'm not a writer, or I wasn't before, and so not really a great writer now, but I did it to heal myself, right? I had to face kind of the things that had happened. I could do it by writing, and I had amazing support. I couldn't have asked for any better. I had just incredible support, but I still felt incredibly alone. And I thought, if it could make me feel like that, with the support that I had, it could make anybody feel like. I mean, this came along, 5 words just dropped me and everybody around me to our knees. And it was, you have a brain tumor. And the only thing worse is if your child would have a brain tumor. And so, and that's exponentially worse. And so I started to connect with other people on social media who had brain tumors. And I never did social media before. I never had time for it. And I found that it was a good platform for us to connect. And so I started a group called Brain Tumor Talk, December 26th, the day after Christmas in 2009. It was just me and a couple of my friends. And, word got out, and slowly, very, very slowly, people started to find it. And they started to join, and they started to share their stories. And now it has over 14,000 people from over 50 countries. And, did I found it? Yes. Is it the biggest in the world? Yes. What does that mean to me? Well, ego wise and pride wise, nothing. But, satisfaction wise is that I had the opportunity to create this place, a safe place, a place where people could have a voice, they could be heard, and they could be surrounded by other people who get it, and they don't feel alone. And it does help. And I'm very, very fortunate that I have admins. I have 4 admins from around the country, brain tumor and brain cancer survivors, and they help me to run the group on a day-to-day basis. And it's just it's really, I feel very humble and blessed that I'm able to do that. I mean, I wrote a book, and I'm writing another one about servant leadership right now. I did a radio show for 4.5 years to get word out, but none of this is about me. At the end of the day, it's kind of the legacy that you lead. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I'm okay with that, in the fact that I know that I've helped people along the way. And so I'm good. I don't have, I've done some good. I've left a pretty good legacy. My MRI is coming up, and so let's just say that something is there or whatever. Bring it. You want, come get it. It's, you want some, you come get some, man. That's the way that it is. You're gonna know you were been in a fight if you're coming after me again, right? And you keep trying and you keep failing, and that's okay. I'm not going anywhere. And so that's kind of where I stand. That's my attitude. And with the business coaching, it's a lot of letting people know they're not alone. It's tough to be in business, especially pandemic or no, even pre-pandemic, it was tough. Now it's incredibly difficult to be in business. And, we talk about the different things that we do for businesses. It's like learning how to walk again. You got to get that foundation. It's like, learning how to stand, and then you have the fundamentals. You got to learn how to walk, and then fast forward, run as fast and far as you want, and that's really where it kind of leads. So I'm doing what I love. And again, I'm very, very fortunate, and really meeting people like you and people in the brain tumor community. Sometimes I'm asked, if I would have gotten diagnosed earlier, would that have been better? If I could go back, would I? And the answer is no on a couple of levels. Number one, you can't go back, so that's just stupid. So I'm not going to give that any thought. And the second is that I wouldn't trade the relationships that I've made and the changes that I was able to make for anything. I feel that I'm a much better person. I'm a better man. I'm a better father, husband. just a human being because of everything that happened to me. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to meet so many people that I have through this. I wouldn't have been able to meet you and our mutual friend Wendy, who had introduced us, and so many people. So would I trade it for anything? No, just the pain that my family had gone through, especially my wife, as my primary caregiver, that I would trade away in a second, because the caregivers are really the heroes here, not us.
Yeah.
They do the heavy lifting, not us. They're the ones that really deserve all the accolades, not us.
Yeah. My girlfriend she had a challenging time. She did great. She's a nurse, but I'm so grateful for her, and for the people around. And honestly, and you touched on this when you shared your story, is I had an amazing neurosurgeon, just an amazing guy. Like, he saw me 3 days after a diagnosis in an ER at a smaller hospital. And I walked in there, and honestly, with tears rolling down, I said, I swear. And I said, this is fucking hard. I said it to him 4 times. And he looked at me and he goes, I know. And he said, I don't know what it is, but it's got to come out. And so we just do we do hard things. But I'll tell you, I cannot say enough about how amazing this guy is, not just in the work he did, but just his bedside manner and all kinds of things. And to him, it's probably routine. He's probably does like 2 of these a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how routine that anything is. The brain is so incredibly complex, and I think that every one of the surgeries probably holds their own set of challenges for sure. So
when you're in there, I spent time in the OR as a nurse before, and because you just see these cases come in and out. I saw some brain, I saw some heart, all that stuff. So I had that going in, which the one thing, honestly, that, you brought up that I never, not that I acknowledge, is I never heard about the naming the tumor, right? Even though I'm in the groups, right? And I'm glad, because I don't want to name it. It's mostly gone, because then if I name it, I'm attached to it, right? Like you kind
kinda, yeah.
yeah.
You're giving it like an identity, and all I wanted was it to be, gone. And one of the things that we talk about is, it's how we cope, right? And so one of the things that we do to cope is we kind of go into shock and we kind of shut down. So when people are newly diagnosed, and one of the things they say, now what do I do? And so one of the things that I would tell them as a strategy is bring somebody with you. I mean, it was always me, my mom, my wife, or my daughter would come, or my son would come. Somebody would come besides me and my wife. And why? Because I was listening, but that was one thing. My wife kind of shut down, because all she wanted to hear was that I was going to live and everything was going to be okay. Because that's kind of where she was in the process, especially early on. And so we needed somebody there to really listen, take notes, and to be able to recap on everything, what the strategy was. And everything that happens when we have these is strategy. We all like Google things. So I Googled what a craniotomy was, and what a mistake that was. It was a horror show. I just stopped watching it. I'm going, man, this isn't good, man. They're going to be slicing and dicing and cutting and drilling in my head. I don't want to think about that anymore. So there's wonderful, I mean, the groups are good, like Brain Tumor Talk and things like that. But for the real facts and everything that you get, American Brain Tumor Association, the National Brain Tumor Society, they have the people, the processes, the systems in place to really help you get from point A to point B, and really figure out what your care program can be, and the real facts of what things are. Sometimes more things come out that are opinion and not facts. And so you want to get, and this isn't like in a group, I'm talking online. So when you look at things that are maybe not PubMed or .org or .gov and things like that, you're looking at maybe the quick self-healing things or whatever. And everybody, I'm not against alternative meds. In fact, there's some that are very, very good, but there is no cure for brain tumors and brain cancer. There's no known facts of why they come. They're the number one cancer causing killer of children from the age of 20. There's over 700,000 people that are living with the diagnosis of a primary brain tumor, which means that it starts in the brain and it stays there. We're in the United States alone, metastatic tumors, the number is so much greater. There's no effective way to screen for them except for MRIs and CAT scans and things like that. So brain cancer, it's not a death sentence because there's different things coming out all the time, but it is one of what they call orphan diseases, where there isn't the funding and the research going into finding a cure for this. And it's obscene, the lack of funding that it has. And so that's where I kind of jumped in, is the fundraising and the awareness and just the support for that, because we kind of go hands off on things that we don't understand. You talked about something that was so relevant, and I want to talk about it for a second. Is I'm sorry, so sorry this happened to you.
That's
you
what they
know
say.
and that's what we tend to say. Somebody passed away, I'm sorry. Or and so what do you want people to say? Well, that's what they say. It's got to be that call more. Yeah, there's something, why do I ask you to raise awareness and get on this train about brain tumors, especially in May and whatever, when it's Brain Tumor Awareness Month? Because like you, there was a time when I didn't have a brain tumor either. And so does it take hitting us personally for that to happen? Yeah, it does. But is that, that's the game changer. So that's where the pain can bring about change a little bit. And that's why you do these podcasts and things like that, right? That's why I do what I do. And it's just like that. I never want anybody to walk alone on that path. I just don't. I felt incredibly alone, even though I had amazing support. Not everybody is that fortunate to have that type of support. So it's getting people from that point A to point B, and getting them unstuck. And the most important thing is not to lose hope, my favorite 4-letter word. And it really is, because hope is real. It's a tangible thing you can wrap your arms around. And, it is just getting through to the next day. That's hope.
That is hope. And it's interesting. I did not Google stuff. So I was like, I'm not Googling anything. I just kind of listened to my doctors, my girlfriend, my ex-wife, they did, and they kind of filtered the info. That was one of the things I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm like, let me take one step at a time. And the thing that I found very fascinating, because you brought up some great interesting facts about brain tumors and all that, is because when there's something in your head, they're like, well, we got to see if it came from somewhere else. So they scanned me from tail to from top to bottom. And I'm like, oh my God, like I had a cancer evaluation, probably the most thorough assessment, 48 years old. And I've had a brain tumor, right? And my goal is not just brain tumor, but something that's just traumatic, that, you get a cancer diagnosis. There's so much breast cancer. There's all this stuff like out of nowhere, or that people are going through, that are dealing with. And it's I think the thing that really drives me is not just awareness, but really starting to understand to live your life. And, eat like you have cancer, and live your life like you're dying, in a way to start enjoy some of the things. Cause I think one of the things that I learned, and I'm going to ask you this, is I'm a healthy guy. I eat, I work out. Right. And I'll tell you a funny story. I done, right. Israeli fighting. I
Right.
want to get into jujitsu because I feel so. I told I must have been fogged, my last neurosurgeon visit. I go, doctor, I said, when can I go back to doing Krav Maga? And he goes, is that like MMA? I said, kind of. He goes, Todd, that's kind of stupid. because you hit your head. And he wasn't wrong. He's a super nice guy, right?
Right.
But this is what, and I was like, you're right, so obviously I haven't done it, but like part of me wants to start to roll and do all kinds of different things because I enjoy it. But, one of the things that I learned was that there was this piece that was missing for me. Like it was the stress. I realized too, and sharing, having some other people on the podcast, and when they shared the story, like, my upbringing was challenging when I was younger, where I had PTSD, but I never called it that or whatever. You know what I mean? I've never had a label. I just drove through. But I think living my life with the gas pedal on and the brake at the same time internally, I'm not going to say cause that, but it made me think like, man, I have to look at what stress, I have to look at how I'm living my life and other areas of my life, what kinds of things did you like, when you're doing like, you're going through this, what were the biggest kind of learning for you with this?
So many lessons learned. Again, that would be a whole nother podcast. I think that I can just sum it up and kind of say this is it really showed me the value of living a grateful life, and that's what I try to do every day when I get up in the morning, and really just be grateful. This isn't a dress rehearsal. This is, there isn't a do-over or anything else. This is it, and this is it. And so we've got to do what we can with it. Just because I went through that and people say you're inspirational, I can be kind of a jerk. In fact, I can be a real jerk, right? Just because I went through this doesn't make me anything except for a human being, right? And so I have to remind myself not to get caught up in the petty things and the minutia of the day, and kind of put that aside and look at the bigger purpose, look at the play long ball a little bit, and just be grateful. And again, we've got to do with what we can do. If I can go and help somebody along, I'd rather be that person, and that's how I'd like to be remembered. And we kind of move on from there. So there's a lot of lessons that we all learn along the way, and it makes it kind of personal to each person. There's a lot of similarities, but the one thing that I can say is it really showed me to really be more purposeful in being grateful every day.
Amazing. That's amazing. The one thing I wanted to touch, because it's like gnawing at me that you shared, and because I identify with it, is you hit a bottom, right? You shared when you hit your bottom, right? And sometimes people hang there, right?
They do.
They do. So what do you think was the turning point where you were just like, tell me about the bottom and what you did to kind of get yourself out of it?
Well, I mean, I kind of went over what it was like. I just felt like I failed, and I didn't. And it was, I felt that I failed so spectacularly that there was no way out. And, I didn't make this next thing up, but it's absolutely true. And this is, a story that people tell, but I liken it to both the coaching, business coaching that I do, and for the brain tumor community as well. And so it's kind of like this is, why I do what I do. And we talked about the whole Simon Sinek before we got on here, the golden circle, not the what, not the how, but start with the why and everything else. So there was a guy walking down the street, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but guy's walking down the street, and all of a sudden he falls into a hole, and it's a big hole. It's a deep hole. It's got steep sides, and he can't get out. So he's stuck down there, right? It's the bottom. Along in a little while comes a doctor, and he's walking down the sidewalk, and he yells up, "Hey, doc, can you help me out? I fell in this hole. I can't get out." So the doctor stops, pulls out a pad, writes a prescription, tosses it down the hole, and he walks away. A little while later, a priest walks down the sidewalk, and he yells up, "Hey, Father, Padre, could you help me out? I fell down here. I can't get out. Can you help me?" So the priest stops, pulls out a pad, writes down a prayer, tosses it down the hole, and he moves on. A little while later, I come down the sidewalk. He goes up, "Hey, buddy, Franzo, can you help me out? I'm down here. I can't get out." I look down there. Yeah, it's pretty deep. So I jumped down there with him. He looks at me. So what the hell did you do that for? He goes, that was really stupid. He says, now we're both down here. I said, yeah, but I've been down here before and I know the way out.
Wow.
I'm not going to let anybody go through anything by themselves. One of the things that we can do, just show up for somebody, man. Just be there.
Sometimes people just need encouragement, need somebody to be there.
They do, and they need more. Sometimes people don't need you to say anything. They need you to just keep your mouth shut and for you to listen, because maybe nobody ever listened to them before. It isn't
Right.
about what we say. I can come up with a billion different inspirational things. They're going to ring hollow if the person just wants somebody to listen to them.
I know that was awesome. You actually, all the question, you just answered them all in that. But, as being part of that, the Brain Tumor Talk group, which is a great group, what do you feel is more the biggest common theme of where people need the biggest help?
I think they just want to know that it's almost that C.S. Lewis kind of a dynamic as what you two. I thought I was the only one. It's surround people with people that get it. People have, there's people from different countries. There's people that don't even, you have to use a translator to the translator app to go and see what they're posting. There's people that have cancer on there. There's people that have non-malignant tumors. There's people that have lost their children. Just so heartbreaking to brain cancer. And they just want some place where they're kind of understood. And again, it's a platform for them to, seek information, sure, but just so that they can kind of let some of these things out. They have somebody that's going to listen to them. That they can. It's a safe place, and it may not be safe with their family because their family doesn't understand, and they're like, "Well, you look good. I don't know why you feel like it. You look great. You know." That may be true, but we don't know what's going on underneath the hat. And so they just want to be around people that get it, and it's as simple and incredibly complex as that. It's not it's not about medical advice, and it's not about all of that kind of stuff. Is that a component of it? Sure. The real part of it is that people share their experiences, they share their thoughts. So much of we do, and we don't acknowledge this. It's based on emotion. What emotion does it make you feel when you go onto a group and you say something? And it's not just people go on there and vent. They're like, I had enough of this, and people will offer encouragement, or they'll just let them know, I felt like this too. That's probably one of the most powerful things that somebody can say when I'm introduced to people like yourself, and we have similarities and everything else. I don't feel so alone, and that you probably don't feel so alone either. And that's everything, man. We just, if we can go through life and just have somebody to kind of walk next to us down that path, no matter how difficult or rocky or treacherous, that's just everything. It just is. And so that's why I do what I do professionally. And that's what I do, as my passion and my philanthropy and things like that.
So what would you say to somebody that's just really struggling, and they're kind of at their bottom, and
Yeah.
you give them just a piece of advice, and they're just feeling anxious, down, depressed, whatever it is? What would you say?
I really would do more. I don't usually give advice. Um, I really would just listen to what it is that's personal to them, and then we would talk about what the path looks like for them to get to point B. Everybody has a point A and everybody has a point B, and it goes both in the brain tumor community and professionally. What I've gotten really good at by through just being present is for so many years is helping people to level up, whatever that looks like to them, to get unstuck. Right when people are down there, I've been there. right? So I can speak from experience on that. So that's where kind of the mentorship comes in. Don't don't take it upon yourself to do it yourself. Take that pride and that ego and just toss it out, because they're gonna stop you from growing and getting some of the things that you need to move forward. So that's what it is. I've learned to be an effective listener, and they say listening is a soft skill. That's a bunch of nonsense. It's definitely one of the most tangible skills that you can have as a human being. Just be present for people. Uh, they just want to talk about themselves and some of the things that they experience because they feel alone, or they feel scared, or they've got anxiety, or they just want to be heard. And that to me is everything. So I don't give advice for people like that, because everybody's different. Everybody is it's personal to them. So what I do is I basically listen, and we craft strategy based on that.
That's fantastic. So I want you to share definitely a little bit about the company, the coaching you do. I see that behind you there, and how, you've gone through all this and you continue. Life's a journey, right? We got scans coming up. Tell me a little bit about this coaching. I want to hear a little bit about it and who you're helping and all that.
Sure. So, the Growth Coach it's a franchise. Okay. And so I bought the franchise in 2018. It's a franchise that has 20 years in the business coaching realm. We have coaches all over the country and all over the world. The network is phenomenal. People with all kinds of backgrounds like mine. There's MBAs, there is banking executives, everything else. And what they did is, they wanted to take ownership wherever they were. Like me, they had a good run, but they wanted to do something for themselves. And so they bought really a business, right? That they don't have to get up and have a job anymore. And so what we do, everybody that comes in has one thing that is critical for anybody that is dealing with people. They have an enormous sense of empathy. They are able to go and empathize with people and really help to get them unstuck. So we just go and help people to change their mindset, how they see things, and really go on to whatever their hopes, dreams, aspirations are now, and moving on into the future. And so one of the greatest things I did was engage with this and, form a corporation. And I'm in it by myself, but not by myself in the real. It's my business, but I'm surrounded by other people that have the same goals. And so anybody's just a phone call away, and as am I. So it's a fantastic thing. I love the Growth Coach. I love business coaching, and I love what I do. I get up every day really excited to hit it. If you're not getting up excited every day, then before you go to work, then you just have a job and you don't have a business.
That's fantastic. I agree 100%. And the other thing too is you wrote a book, and did you write 2 books, or you're on your second book?
So I'm on my second book. I'm writing a book now on servant leadership, but the book that I wrote is How Horseshoe Saved My Life, ironically, right? A Tale of Two Brain Tumors, because if I wasn't playing horseshoes that day, again, I never would have went to the doctor, and I would have expired. And you and I and all the wonderful people that are watching this podcast, we wouldn't have the chance to, be here to see this interview. So that's really what it is. It's a tale of 2 brain tumors, but then the third one came around. So maybe I'll do another book, after that. But again, it was first to heal myself, and then I've really used that as a tool to help others to dig out of whatever hole that they've fallen into and they can't get out.
That's awesome. And, and I have to share this, and I want you to share, as we talked yesterday, a little bit about the podcast, and I wanted you to share about the book, obviously, but, the proceeds you get to the book are to help other people out, right?
I do. I use those. And so I don't really talk about that. It's kind of when people reach out to me, again, I was so fortunate again, and I'm so grateful. This could be devastating in the financial way, and I was just very, very fortunate. I had great insurance. I had so many things in my personal life squared away that the impact financially to me was very minimal, if at all. And so some people are just this crushes them financially and otherwise, and it destroys livelihoods. It destroys whatever they were doing career wise, relationship wise, otherwise. So if I can help to make their load a little lighter from proceeds with the book, and the generosity of others that I approach about this, then we do that. So
I love
nothing I
that.
really talk about. I've done some things, but that's kind of beside the point. I don't, that's kind of, it's just what we do.
It's isn't that, I saw that like it's the definition of character, right? It's what we do when no one's watching, right?
Yeah, your character and integrity. And so, it's important. And, I just, I don't, I would rather be that person that helps, right? We got enough successful people in the world. That's one thing, right? What about the people that kind of help others on their way, to make their load a little lighter? That's really what it's about.
I mention it because it's God's work right there for sure.
It definitely is. Yep, for
And
sure.
I appreciate that, and that's stuff that I value for sure, and helping other people. And so, all of the information will be included in the show notes if you want to check it out and see what Rick's up to, and follow along. And for anybody, it's not just any people with brain tumor, but anybody going through this hard time, or got a gut punch from something, it's that's what we're here for sure. So Rick, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your amazing story, and and just kind of getting up and being the epitome and a model for just keep going and one foot in front of the other, and all the help that you do for sure.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it, Todd. This was awesome. And again, if you need more information on brain tumors and brain cancers, absolutely. The American Brain Tumor Association and the National Brain Tumor Society are two amazing nonprofits that we have here in the United States, that can really help you to get all the information and the resources that you need. And I'm sure that you're going to put those links in as well. So those are the two that I definitely always advise that people check out for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Rick, and you have an awesome day.
You too. Thank you so much, Todd.
All right, take care, man.